I always feel like we start these with like a giant sigh. There's that verse in Romans 8 that says that the Holy Spirit interprets even our groanings as prayers. And I think of that so often because I think, especially lately, in the last few years, a deep cleansing, centering sigh is like sometimes the most prayerful thing that I can do, to just like, so I just want to invite you, if you're watching, like to do that with me, because I think we all need a collective exhale for just a minute of just a big deep breath. Holly, I heard someone kind of jokingly say recently that it must be really nice to be able to be virtual in this season. And it must be nice because we don't have to deal with all the extra pieces and all of the extra sermon planning pieces and worship planning pieces. And I just wanted to kind of be like, again, I just sighed. I'm praying over that comment. I need you to know that if you're watching tonight, this very space, I think for us is an act of love. This very space is a sacrifice, and it's hard. And we miss being in person, and we miss that privilege of gathering and getting to do hugs and see people and spend time together and enjoy a meal together. But we also fully recognized in this season that in some ways, using our space once a week to gather to fill our buckets was a little bit selfish when we recognized that there were so many people in this city who didn't have a space, especially families with little kids, and that the only way we could provide that space for them consistently was to sacrifice that weekly gathering time. And I think it has challenged us. It has challenged conversations in this community around what is the church? What is it supposed to be? What is it supposed to look like? I feel like we've been having these conversations for 3 years, that nothing that we oftentimes view as normal church are sometimes the things that I think were envisioned when we were called into community in the New Testament, when New Testament believers were gathering in houses and they were sharing life together and they were sharing their meals. And we read about in Acts chapter 2, they were sharing their belongings and they were helping one another to do life. They understood that the important thing wasn't tithing numbers, and the important thing wasn't how big of a performance can I put on, and the important thing wasn't how many people are here and counting attendance. It was, how do I love people well? How do I love the people around me well? And so I want you to know, I want you to hear that it is good to be in this space with you and to connect, but that it is out of love, not just for you and for this community, but out of what we truly believe, a love for the church and what it can and could look like, that we are back in this virtual space. So will you start us tonight? Okay. For those of you that have been joining us for this virtual Advent season at TCG, Holly has started us off every week with the same song. And it is a song that just declares a word of welcome, a word of inclusion to all of us, that everyone is welcome to come. And it is called, "O Come All Ye Unfaithful." And so I just want to invite you, take some deep breaths. If you're in a space where you can close your eyes and just listen to these words, to do that. And just meditate on this invitation as we get ready to unpackage this last week of Advent and talk about the theme of love.
Oh, come, all you unfaithful, come, weak and unstable. you are not alone. Oh, come, yearning and waiting ones, weary of praying, come, see what your God has done. Christ is born. Christ is born. Christ is born for you. Oh, come, bitter and broken, come, with fears unspoken, come, taste of his perfect love. Oh, come, guilty and hiding ones, there is no need to run. See what your God has done. Christ is born. Christ is born. Christ is born for you. He's the Lamb who was given, slain for our pardon. His promise is peace for those who believe. He's the Lamb that was given, slain for our pardon. His promise is peace for those who believe. So come, though you have nothing, come. He is the offering, come. See what your God has done. Christ is born. Christ is born. Christ is born for you. Christ is born. Christ is born. Christ is born for you.
So I shared a quote on Facebook this week. I shared it on our church's Facebook page, and I'm gonna put it up here on the screen so that you can see it, because I want to talk about it tonight as kind of the foundation to our conversation. It's from Oscar Romero, and it says this: "We must not seek the child Jesus in the pretty figures of our Christmas. We must seek him among the undernourished children who have gone to bed at night with nothing to eat, among the poor who sleep in the doorways." I just want to leave that there for a second. I want you to read that a couple of times. So let those words sink in for just a minute. We must not seek the child Jesus in the pretty figures of our Christmas. What is the pretty figures of Christmas, right? The lights and the celebrations and the fancy pageants and the Christmas cantatas and all of the places of beauty that surround the beautiful act of love of Christmas. But sometimes we get so wrapped up in what is beautiful that we fail to seek him among the undernourished children who have gone to bed at night with nothing to eat, among the poor who sleep in the doorways. So this week, as this quote has just really kind of like marinated in my spirit, as we are approaching this week of the final official week of Advent, which is often a week with the theme of love, I found myself, Holly, thinking that I think where we often look for Jesus often not only frames our perspective of Jesus, I also think it shapes our worship of Jesus. And I would argue that it also begins to shape our expression of love. Here's what I mean by that. I mean that if you feel most connected to what is holy and what is divine in places that are pretty, and I'm going to be a little harsh here and push, okay? In places that are warm, in places that are beautifully decorated, in places that are sanitized, in places that are safe, in places that are comfortable, in places that are entertaining. If those are the spaces where you feel the most connected to the holiness of Christmas and the presence of God, if those are the spaces that reflect the love of Jesus the most to you, then I would argue that there are probably a connection that you feel most comfortable then worshiping in spaces like that. And you also feel most comfortable a lot of times loving people in spaces like that. I'm going to show you love by inviting you to an event in one of these safe, clean, warm, predictable environments. I'm going to show love to you by, writing a check so that this location does something and I'm not challenged to leave this warm, safe, sanitized, secure, beautiful space. I think that where we seek love and where we seek Jesus often shapes how we worship Jesus. And I think it also often shapes how we love like Jesus. Because if we start to only find Jesus and only find what is holy and only find a connection that feels spiritual in places that are entertaining and places that, are fog machines and laser lights and jumping motorcycles on the stage and dancing snowmen and all of these amazing things, then we start to think that loving Jesus is also something to be performed instead of seeing it as something to be sacrificed for. I'm going to pause there for a second. How does that hit you? Because I recognize it's a hard thing to talk about. It's a hard truth. It's not an easy thing to wrestle with in ourselves.
I think that the thing that hits me the most is like, I don't know, I think in a lot of ways, a lot of us had certain pieces of tradition and norm stripped away in the season of COVID, when we had to like wrestle with what was the most important pieces of things like holidays. And you found people that like sought such creative spaces to honor those things, even though there wasn't that degree of of entertainment and of just grandioseness. Like there was a lot of really beautiful spaces. I think that people found community, or they found tradition, or they found rituals, or whatever it was. And I think you see that in people every day that are in vulnerable and crisis places, like the desire to still find a way to make Christmas feel beautiful. And like, I think so many times when you have to do without, that's where you find that love and that like connection to Jesus the most. And I know, I think coming out of a place of COVID and seeing this year feels like things have gone back to normal, and in some places, especially in church places, have gone back to normal in ways that have sometimes been disappointing, in my opinion. When the stripped away versions, I think, were much more intimate and community minded and compassionate. And I think there's a grief of missing some of those spaces.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel that. And I resonate with that, Holly, because I think for me, as someone who holds this constant liminal space of tension, right, between someone who deeply believes in the potential of the church and deeply loves the call of the church to community, I also hold this tension of just grief and frustration and lament at how superficial and shallow in so many spaces the church has become. And we have exchanged entertainment for what it looks like to genuinely fellowship and build community and love and serve and connect and be compassionate. And so this gap that exists between the two can sometimes be a really hard space for me to navigate. But one of the things that, if COVID did anything, right, I think for me, I was so prayerful that maybe it would break in the church, the boxes that we have tried to put things into, right? Like, this is the way that we celebrate Christmas. This is the way that we worship. This is the way that we show love. These are the ministries that we're involved with. Like, this is our space to hold, and that it would break those things free, and it would deconstruct these boxes and these barriers, and it would allow us the freedom to be creative. And so we saw all of these beautiful expressions of creativity, I think, in that season, as people tried to find ways to connect and tried to tap into what was spiritual and what was holy, even when they couldn't use things that they had traditionally used. But you're so right. There's been this just like gravitational pull back in so many of us back to what is normal. And I think what is just so heavy on my heart this week, as we are quickly approaching Christmas, is this duplicity, right? Of like this quote just said, I'm going to throw it back up here while I look at it one more time. Where we seek Jesus, right? If we seek him in what is pretty, then that is going to shape how we love. And it's going to shape it all year long, not just at Christmas time. But if we don't seek him among the things that aren't considered pretty, amongst hungry children and amongst people that are sleeping in the doorways, and hear me in this, don't think that those things don't exist in Springfield. We have a plethora of hungry babies. We have a lot of children that are living in poverty. We have a lot of children and teenagers that are sleeping in tents this very night because every single shelter space for children is full. And the only ones that exist that might remotely have openings require them to be separated from their parents or their caregivers. And so don't think that that doesn't happen here. And don't think that we don't have people sleeping in doorways because cold weather shelters are open tonight. I'm grateful for every space that opens their doors. But we have 800 plus people who traditionally are in camps or on the streets with no shelter whatsoever. And we only have about 125 shelter beds available tonight. And a big chunk of those are at the campers, and those aren't heated. And so I need you to know and understand that this isn't something that you have to go on mission for to find a way to seek Jesus in the needy and the hungry and the vulnerable. There is this need present around every single street corner in Springfield. And it's Christmas. And it's a season where I think we tend to feel a touch bit more merciful and a touch bit more compassionate. But I'm going to be really real with you for a minute, because that's what I tend to do. I spent my day today looking at the weather forecast. And I spent my day today looking at the fact that going into Christmas, we are looking at temperatures -5, -11, -9, -1, 0. I spent my day today calling churches and begging them to consider opening their doors for extra shelter space next week. I spent my day today trying to get volunteers who might be willing to share some of their holiday plan time to come and to love on people in a radically different way than maybe what they had planned on. I spent my day today trying to find answers and to begin the process of coming up with a crisis response for the weather that's getting ready to settle in. Tell me how you spent your day today.
I spent my day, and I'm still doing it. I spent my night last night at the shelter unexpectedly, and was up all night loving on the families that we had there. Spent my morning with a teenager who has nowhere to go and no one to call family, trying to find a plan for today. And then I spent my day on the phone trying to mostly just listening to so many families that are sleeping in tents and sleeping in cars, who have access to resources and have their names on waiting lists, who have thus far been waiting it out because there aren't beds anywhere, but who are terrified of freezing in this weather and asking where they go and not having any answers at this time. And it's not just the weather that's coming, it's the weather that's tonight that is.
Yeah. So I'm going to show you one other thing really quickly. Some of you that follow me personally on Facebook, I shared another thing this week. And I'm going to share my screen with you real quick. I shared this post on my personal Facebook page this week. If you look at the cartoon, there's a family huddled in the cold, and there is a parent or a caregiver walking with a little kiddo. And that caregiver says, "No, honey, that's not a manger scene." And I posted a series of questions. I'm not going to read it all for you right now, but I posted a series of questions about what would have happened if Jesus would have been born today. How different would things have looked? And then I tried to kind of apply this Matthew 25 concept that Jesus spoke into letters, where he said, "What you do unto the least of these, you do unto me." And this idea of everyone bearing the image of holiness. And how often do we discount images of holiness all around us? And so I encourage you to take some time after this to look at that post, to check it out. We shared it on our church's Facebook page as well. And I'm going to say something. And I know that what I'm going to say may really step on some toes. But when it is the Advent week of love, and when it is the week of Christmas, and when our churches are full of sermons about loving and about the greatest act of love that many of us in the Christian tradition believe to be the birth of Jesus, I'm going to remind us of a different section of scripture that we don't always talk about in the context of Christmas season. But it's from John 15, and it says this. This is Jesus speaking. These are red letters. And it says, "I have loved you, even as the Father has loved me. So remain in my love. When you obey my commandments, you remain in my love, just as I obey my Father's commandments and remain in his love. I have told you these things so that you will be filled with joy. This is my commandment. Love each other in the same way that I have loved you. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command." We are called and commanded as people who claim to know and to love and to follow the teachings of Jesus. We are commanded to love. And so this week of Advent should not just be a celebration of this beautiful, pretty, shiny space, right? Where we seek Jesus in what is pretty this week, in the candles and the light and the laughter and all of the things that are precious. Because if we're not having the same conversation about seeking Jesus in the places that are hard, where love also exists and where love also came down for, then we are missing a massive component of the gospel. And not only that, but I would go so far as to say that especially this coming week, as we look ahead in our community and we look ahead at the fact that we have weather coming in that is literally going to cost some of our neighbors their lives. There are teenagers who stand at risk of not waking up in the morning. There are toddlers in cars who stand the risk of not waking up in the mornings in those weathers. There are parents, there are grandparents, there are brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and people whose names are precious who stand the risk of not waking up in those mornings because it is so unbelievably cold what is coming. And it's like Holly said, it's already dangerous. It's already to the point where we can see people. I sent a guy to the emergency room this morning for the early stages of hypothermia. If we have an empty building with doors shut, I would question how loving that is. If we have capacity to help and we don't, I would question how loving that is. If we have resources to share and we choose not to, I would question how loving that is. We are commanded to love, not just when it's easy, not just when it's pretty, not just when it's shiny or sparkly or when it's convenient on our calendars. I get that an Arctic cold snap the week of Christmas, when Christmas falls on a Sunday, not convenient for a lot of faith spaces. But I would also argue that the most authentic expression of Christian love would be to cancel Sunday services and open our doors so people don't freeze. In my faith tradition, when I look at scripture, I believe that Jesus came to earth to experience suffering, to experience life on the margins. Jesus did not come into opulence and comfort. Jesus came and was born into poverty, was born into oppression, was born as a refugee who had to run for his life with his parents, who was born into some of the hardest spaces of a colonized existence. And he came to teach love, to challenge systems of power, to bring instruments of justice, to call us to action in new ways. And so if we truly want to celebrate that love came down, then I think we've got to celebrate that best by loving out loud in hard spaces that reflect that kind of sacrifice. I'm going to ask you if you would just take a few minutes and lead us in a song that we have done here many times at TCG, especially around Christmas. But it's a song that reminds us that love came down. And it is a song that reminds us that that doesn't always come in the prettiest of packages or the easiest of spaces. But because love was, we are called to still continue to love and to do and to be all verbs, all actions, not just concepts, not just intentions, but things that we do and we sacrifice for.
My heart is overwhelmed and I cannot hear your voice. I'll hold on to what is true, though I I cannot see. If the storms of life they come and the road ahead gets steep, I will lift these hands in faith. I will believe. I'll remind myself of all that you've done and the life I have because of your Son. Love came down and rescued me. Love came down and set me free. I am yours. I am forever yours. Mountain high or valley low, I sing out, remind my soul, I am yours. I am forever yours. When my heart is filled with hope and every promise comes my way, when I feel your hands of grace rest upon me, staying desperate for you, God, staying humbled at your feet, I will lift these hands in praise. I will believe. I'll remind myself of all that you've done and the life I have because of your Son. Love came down and rescued me. Love came down and set me free. I am yours. I am forever yours. Mountain high or valley low, I sing out, remind my soul, I am yours. I am forever yours. I am yours. I am forever yours.
It is my hope, it is my prayer that you find ways to be love in action this Christmas week. That you put hands and feet to the theme of love. That you are obedient in the call and the command to love. That you are brave and bold in spaces where you can love in new ways. That you are courageous and willing to change. That you are willing to confront your comfort and maybe even your apathy, to put yourself into spaces to love in new ways. It is my hope and it is my heart this week that we don't see any lives lost in this coming crisis, because we all pull together with a motivation of loving those in need and seeing Jesus in those in need, not seeing people as a project that needs to be saved, but seeing people as holy and valuable and worthy of love. I continue to have a hope, and I continue to have an optimistic belief that we can and we are capable of doing these kind of things and coming together in big, beautiful ways. I believe fully that hearts can change, that actions can change, that churches can change, that places can pivot and say, you know what, we are going to make a shift. We're going to make a change. We're going to respond to a need, because love in its purest form is responsive. Love can't always be planned and scheduled. Sometimes it surprises us. Sometimes it catches us in moments that are not convenient, and it calls us to action, and it calls us to wrestle with our own desire for what is me focused, and it challenges us to be we focused. And so I'm going to challenge you. What do you need to do to be more focused on the we and not just the me this Christmas week? Any thoughts from you? Okay. So normally we end with a top three of ways to kind of know about what's going on. I'm going to kind of do a combo situation here because we have this huge need coming this week with the weather dipping so deadly cold. We put out a form on Facebook just about an hour ago, and it is a volunteer interest form. It will let you say, hey, this week, I know the cold weather's coming. Count on me to help in some capacity. It'll let you tell us what hours you're available. It will let you tell us what kind of ways you'd like to help, whether it's making a meal or transportation, working a shelter shift, being on street outreach, whatever that looks like. And then based upon how many people respond to that and say, I'm willing to help Love Out Loud this week, that's going to determine how much we can do and what's that going to look like. You know, in the past couple of years, when these really cold snaps have come, we've been able to scramble with hotel money and just insane generosity in the city. The problem isn't the generosity this year. The problem is there are not hotel rooms to rent. We have so many more people that are living in weekly rentals as their shelter. Right now, there's just not enough capacity to meet that need. And so we're going to have to do this differently this year. And so it's going to require a lot of us to come together. So if you are willing to help in any capacity, would you please, please, please go to the Connecting Grounds Facebook page and just fill out that form that we shared. If you're part of our TCG volunteers group, it was originally shared in there, and then we shared it to our Facebook page from that group. So please let us know if you're willing to help in any capacity. That will help us make some decisions. The other thing for you to know is that as of right now, we are still planning on having a Christmas Eve virtual service. We may be doing it from our family shelter because we're going to need as many volunteers as possible to keep those spaces open. But we will be figuring out what that's going to look like as soon as we figure out what volunteer capacity we have. So, but as of right now, we plan to be right back here at the same time and place next Saturday for Christmas Eve service. Any other announcements that you have?
I don't think so. I think the needs are enormous. But there is a lot of beauty in those places of loving on people.
Yeah.
And I promise you, there'll be moments that you are forever changed.
Yeah.
And it is time, and it is heartbreaking a lot of the time, and it does take a lot out of you, but it also gives a lot to you and fills you up in ways you never imagined. Just being in that space with someone is beautiful. So I challenge you, if you've never done anything like that before, to try it. And
yeah, I think what's often surprising about that space, Holly, is I think a lot of people go into that space thinking, I'm going to give love as like an act of service, when in reality, you often experience love and you experience gratitude and you experience just this unbelievable relief that ends up filling your bucket more than you could have ever expected to experience in those spaces. So if you've never experienced that, this is the week to jump in and sign up and be a part of what that looks like to love out loud in a wide variety of capacities in the city. I am hopeful that there are going to be many new spaces for just a short period of time for us to try to fill and staff. And I'm believing big things because I have a big belief in this community and our ability to do what is loving and what is right. Because I know that there is a foundation of that. And I'm going to hold on to that hope, and I'm going to believe that tonight. So, all right. Again, if you have any questions, any thoughts, any concerns, if your toes got stepped on and you want to talk about it, send us a message on our Facebook page and we'll be happy to engage with you. Thanks, everybody.